Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Sunday night's edition of LFC Transfer Room. Joined tonight by Stu, Lawrence, and Reese. Hope everyone's having a good Sunday. I know Nervy win for the Reds earlier on today, and on the face of it, it looks like a good Sunday afternoon when you've got Liverpool winning, restoring their lead, 7 points at the top of the table, and Man United losing again, and now 12 points above relegation zone. So they're actually closer to the relegation zone than City are to us. So if that doesn't make your Sunday evening a little bit better, I'm not sure what will. So I'm just going to come around you lads just before we get started, just checking everyone's all right, and then we'll just have a bit of a discussion through the game, see your kind of thoughts on how you felt it went today. And I know there's probably a little bit of frustration in there as well, so we'll have a bit of a chat through everything and kind of break down the first and second half comparisons between them, and then any other stories that have kind of come out in the last couple of days as well. We'll have a little look through some of the things as well. Start with you, Stu. How are you doing today, bud? You okay?
Yeah, doing well, mate. Doing well. Blood pressure's calmed down a little bit now. But yeah, I do have things to say, but I won't put them on until we get onto those subjects anyway. But yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm good.
Nice one. How are you doing, Lawrence? You okay?
All good, man. Yeah, same here. Absolutely fine. Just wait for the subjects to start, and then we'll start talking.
Yeah, I see a couple of comments already coming through. We're not in the races and stuff today. We'll get onto it in a second, lads. Reese, how are you doing? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good. I can't complain. Obviously,
Good.
we'll get into the game, but the most important thing we've got to bear in mind, we did get the 3 points. Weren't great.
That's it, isn't it? Yeah. Cool. Before we jump straight into the game, lads, just before we get started, everyone just make sure to like and subscribe. Make sure you turn your notifications on for future streams and videos so you don't miss out on future content. Cool. We jump straight into it with you, Stu. I know we kind of already said there's two different halves really compared to each other, but what your kind of thoughts before we jump into breaking down each half, but what your kind of thoughts overall, and I know you got a bit that you want to go into as well.
Firstly, I'll take a little calm approach and leaf out of Reese's book on this one and look on the positive side of it first. It's 3 points. It extends the lead over Arsenal again. We're on 60 points. They're on 53. We're all level on games. That's the positive of it. Yeah. The other positive was the first half. The first half, actually, I thought we were pretty much on top of the game. And if anything, I kind of expected us to be about 3 or 4-0 up by half time. And I think we probably should have been as well. But that second half, I mean, it's a cliche saying it's a game of two halves. That really was a game of two halves. I've not seen a switch around like that in quite some time. In fact, there isn't another game that really springs to mind on like sort of the polar opposites of what happened today. And in the end, we were, I think, lucky more than anything else.
Yeah, no, I can't argue with
that. I've been trying to break it down a little bit more, thinking about like sort of reasons why. I'll go into that a little bit later. But yeah, I think overall, just take the positives, forget about the second half, move on to Villa for Wednesday.
Yeah. Lawrence, what about you on the kind of performance overall? What you kind of thought straight after the game?
Same on as Stu on that, to be honest with you. You know, it was a game of two halves. We had, I would say, arguably a really good first half. And when I seen the team sheet as well, I thought there's not really much a strong 11 that we could put out. So I was, excited, up for the game, especially after seeing the team sheet. And then obviously the second half was just, a dominant performance from Wolves, and they've not seen anything like that against Liverpool in a very long time. So it was a very different take on the games and the season so far. So
yeah, fair. What about you, Reese? What your kind of thoughts immediately afterwards as the game as a whole?
Game of two halves. Obviously, you've got to give Wolves a lot of credit for how bad we were in the second half. They were really good. They played really well. Obviously, they're standout players. Cunha, and obviously he got the goal as well. I think with us, though, we looked complacent at times. If you see a lot of the passing, tired, it looked kind of like we felt, the game's in the bag. Whereas I always look at it, when you're winning 2-0, I always think 2-0 is a dangerous scoreline. Because if you score, more or less it's done. But if the other team scores, the game's back on. But yeah, the team did look tired, and obviously you could see maybe in terms of subs, there's a lot of players Slot don't trust because
Yeah.
he didn't bring players on like a Chiesa. Obviously, I think we missed Curtis Jones today because he could have maybe came on for either McAllister or Gravenberch, who were kind of looking quite leggy. I'm trying to think as well. Gakpo potentially missed as well today. But yeah, it was strange how, because I think we was kind of in control of the game, and then when they scored, it's like we kind of just panicked, whereas we should have just went again. Obviously, they've scored, it's annoying, but just go again, up the levels and try and score, whereas we kind of looked like we just dropped off and dropped deeper and decided, oh, we're going to hold on, which is weird considering we're at home and we're meant to be, I mean, that's meant to be, there's much more expectation that's kind of expected of us.
Yeah, and I guess we'll start with the positive side of it, like you've touched on it. Not only are we 7 points clear, the first half, there were positives to take from that first half. We were in control of the game for large parts of it. I know we weren't exactly rampaging their goal continuously, but we were in really kind of in control of the game. And I think that could have actually had a knock-on effect to the second half of the game, because we almost went into kind of like cruise control level rather than taking the game to Wolves a little bit further into the game. In that first half, though, obviously the early penalty, I think it was about 15 minutes or so into the game, wasn't it? The penalty decision, and then the first goal, sorry, and then the penalty was a little bit later on for Salah. In terms of the first goal, you might say a little bit lucky to ricochet off Luis Diaz, but I think in that first 20 minutes, 25 minutes, he looked a little bit more creative again on that left-hand side compared to where he's potentially been playing down the middle. And then I think, obviously, with the penalty, Salah just does what Salah does and gets another goal, and it is what it is with Salah. I know we've had loads of discussions previously about what you kind of come to expect from him in these types of games. It gets a penalty, and I think previously where he's kind of missed one, I think he actually missed one at Molineux, didn't he? So I think straight down the middle today instead of taking any kind of risks of it, and really just made sure with it and put it down the middle. What did you think of the kind of strengths in the first half, Stu, before we do talk about the second half?
Yeah, definitely. I think Diaz looked sharp on that. So there's no question his position is the left wing position, but his form's just not been as good as Gakpo, so that's why Gakpo's been starting. Positivity wise, like, again, Szoboszlai, Gravenberch, again, very confident. I thought Jota played pretty well, given the fact that he's been out for quite a while for an injury. It's his first start. Although, was the second penalty in the second half or the first half? I can't remember.
Second half.
Second was in the second half,
Yeah.
I mean, first half wise, I think he had one half chance, really. But besides that, his overall sort of play was fairly decent. But for me, I think more than anything, it was just a more composed performance, a more authoritative, I think it's the word if I can get it out right, performance in the first half, and we just lost all that for the second half. I'll go into my own reasons why when we come to that. But yeah, we took control, dominated the first half. Wolves couldn't get near us, and that kind of worked. But I'll say fair play for them in the second half because it completely flipped around.
Yeah. What about you, Lawrence? What do you think of the kind of strengths in the first half? What do you think were our strengths and how we kind of played up to that in the first half?
I'd say the first strength, first of all, was the starting lineup. I think Diaz on the left, I think we're all in agreement. I touched on it as well on Wednesday just gone, that we were, sorry, Diaz shouldn't be starting in the middle. He's not an outright striker. He shouldn't be starting in the middle. So to see Jota in that position, I thought was, quite refreshing. Good to see Jota back, properly starting as well. And as Stu said, we were, dominant, kept possession of the ball in the first half. Thought we looked really, really sharp, especially on the counters. The only thing I will say was Konate. Konate got an early yellow.
Yeah.
And you could see the Wolves attack they were trying to get that second yellow off Konate.
Just touching on that, Lawrence, do you think the last couple of games in particular, it's happened quite a few different players now, hasn't it? I think McAllister at Bournemouth was on a second yellow and he needed to be hooked straight away. Trent, in midweek it was Yeah, was it Trent and then Bradley had to go? Was it Trent and Bradley
Yeah,
had to
yeah.
swap in midweek because of a yellow?
Yeah, yeah.
And again today, where Ibu's had to be hooked for a yellow. I know it can happen in a game where you obviously pick up a yellow, but with how we're having to hook people straight away to almost make sure we're still keeping our kind of level within the game, it's happened quite consistently the last few weeks.
Yeah, I think the thing is, I think that football's developed over time, and I think there's no more of this like, oh, he's on a yellow, sort of like let it go, and if you do get the chance, then he gets a red. I think, especially Cunha was brilliant at it today. He was badly trying to get that second yellow from Canate, and it was the same as with Beto on Wednesday. He was the same, trying to get that second yellow from the players. And as you said, McAllister the other day, we know these players have a bite in them. Like, they've got, and all it takes is someone to take a heavy touch. You've seen it today with the penalty. Diaz took a heavy touch, keeper swipes him, it's a pen. And that's all it takes in this game now to get a yellow, is that all they need to do is knock it away. Ibu leaves a late leg in, and that's the second yellow. So I think it is affecting the game massively, and I think we're obviously noticing it a bit more because it's happening with Liverpool a lot.
Yeah.
And maybe because we've been so dominant in the first half, they're probably thinking if we can get someone sent off here before the second half starts,
levels it up.
Yeah, it levels are up basically. Yeah. But other than that, I thought first half I thought we were really dominant. I thought we played really well. Nice, tight football. The 5 and 10 yard passes that I touched on Wednesday, they were a lot more prone than today. So I was actually happy with the first half.
Yeah. And before we do move on to the second half, Reece, what were your thoughts overall on the first half and kind of strengths and what you thought of it overall?
I think we started quite quickly, which I was impressed with. We were kind of on the front foot from early, so I'm assuming that's probably Slot telling them that as well, particularly because we didn't manage the game as well, obviously, during the week. But I think we started well. Diaz looked more balanced on the left than up front. Trying to think who else. The midfield looked quite sharp, moving the ball around quite quickly. Obviously, I know the first goal is quite scruffy, but sometimes some goals are like that. And for me, you got to take it at the end of the day, as long as it gets over the line. Ideally, I would prefer every goal to be a worldie or a world-class goal, but that's not how football works. And then, obviously, Salah scored the penalty. With the penalty, it was interesting because, for me, the goalie doesn't really need to touch Diaz. Diaz is going at such speed that I think if the goalie doesn't even touch him, I think he goes out of play.
Yeah.
But obviously, it benefited us.
I also saw it over social media on that penalty, Reece. I don't know what you think of it as well, but
I know
because of how far he knocked it, should it be a penalty or not be a penalty?
The goalie clipped him in the box.
Yeah,
so rules is rules, obviously. And I know people are more talking about, I think, the Diaz push the defender or nudge the defender. I think I've seen a lot of social media, but if that's the case, like I said, look what happened to Konate during the week and the goal counters. So I'm not really interested in it. When it's us, everyone wants to say something, but then when we don't get the decision, everyone's laughing. So for me, it's got to be more consistent. It can't be one way then another way. It's got to be more consistent. But I just think it was a lot sharper in the first half.
Yeah,
a lot sharper, and
definitely. And like you said, there's contact from the keeper, so regardless, he does get him. So that's why it's a penalty. And that's why the VAR can't overturn it, even though he does knock the ball out of play. Well, as soon as they look at it and go, yeah, he's touched him, it's a penalty. Just before we move on to the second half, just in terms of the stats from the second half, it is actually quite damning in terms of how dominant Wolves actually were for periods of the second half. I know early on we had the goal with Mo Salah that was given us offside, and I made obviously the penalty that was overturned and given as a drop ball to the goalkeeper instead of a penalty for Jota. But other than those instances early on in the second half, I think during the second half, Wolves actually had 10 shots in the second half compared to nothing from us, none on target from us in any way, shape or form. And I was reading it's only the second time or third time at Anfield that's actually happened since the 2019 season, 2019 and 20 season, and 82-83 is the only time in the second half we haven't registered a single shot. So it just goes to show the levels in terms of the second half, how little we actually did going forward and how we actually clinged on at the end to make sure we saw the game through, because there didn't seem to be much coming forward from us and it was all going the other way for Wolves. Stu, I know you've got bits that you want to go into for the second half. Jump into it, mate. What do you want to say on it?
Okay, firstly, I will say I'm pretty certain that Slot would not have said to those guys at halftime, go out there and be relaxed like that, because you're just inviting trouble. I think for me, it's a combination of a few things. One, maybe a little bit of tiredness, starting to kick in, a little bit of fatigue. When you look at our bench and the options that we got when we lose just a couple of the like sort of more of the first teamers, I don't want to use that as an excuse, but there's clearly players that Slot doesn't trust at the moment. Again, it's not Slot's squad, it's Klopp's squad still, bar Chiesa, who clearly hasn't worked out yet for whatever reason. I think the contract situations are now, we're starting to see maybe a little bit more of the relevance of that kicking in, especially with Trent. I don't want to say anything too bad because of the class of play that he's been for us, but for the last couple of months, and this is stretching from the Man United game up until now, I know he's had a bit of a niggling injury in between. His performances really haven't been good enough. His consistency it's not been good enough again. Today, it was misplaced pass after misplaced pass after misplaced pass. Again and again and again, whether it be long range or short range, especially a couple of them in the first half where it was cross field, but not diagonal. It was just straight across the Wolves line. I didn't like that, and I can understand why he was hooked on, what was it, the 60th minute?
Yeah.
Personally, I probably would have hooked him off at half time. I thought he was that bad. And I say, it's not the first time that he's played that poorly in that position. I can't. The thing is with the contract situation as well. These questions deserve to be asked by now. Because if you're the player, yeah, okay, they can put on the whole public media front and go, yeah, it's not affecting us, blah blah blah. We will get things sorted out, all that sort of stuff. Now, it hasn't obviously really affected Van Dijk's and Salah's form as such, going by their numbers, but by Salah's actual gameplay over the last few games, you can actually tell, yeah, he's had impact with goals and assists, but his overall gameplay, last few games, he's not really been in it. And you can see sometimes on the close-up when you look at him, like it did for when they closed up on the penalty. Now, whether that's focus or I'm misinterpreting it, I could see a little bit of, I don't know, sadness in his demeanor a little bit. It's weird. I can't quite explain it, but that's what I see when I see him. When he stands there and celebrates, it's like, what more else do I have to do?
Yeah, taking it all in and almost saying, where is the situation?
Where is what I deserve? And frankly, he does deserve it.
Yeah.
As does Van Dijk. So again, I think they might say it publicly as part of the press, but privately, I can guarantee that those, especially Van Dijk and Salah, are properly pissed off with what's going on at the moment after the time, energy they've put into the club. As for Trent, Christ knows where his head is at the moment, but his performances over the last couple of months haven't been of the quality that we expect. And it was the same pretty much for most of the players all the way through the second half as well. Robbo was guilty of being pretty slow on the defence. And I think that, again, is another concern that's played out over the season. We've seen Robbo slowing down a little bit. And there was one moment where he played somebody onside. He was a good yard out of line with Quansah and Van Dijk.
He jumped in a couple of times as well, didn't he? And kind of got beat quite easily.
And yeah, that could have cost us, but in the end didn't. I think ultimately, like sort of in conclusion of it all, is we were touted to be on a quadruple run last season with this squad, and we didn't do it. And we got touted again up until the Plymouth game with pretty much the identical squad, bar Chiesa. we are back in the same position we found ourselves last season with exactly the same squad. Whether psychologically that is playing, especially on the fans and the ground, whether that's playing on their mind or whether it's playing on the players' mind a little bit, I don't know. But that nervousness, you could really tell towards like sort of the last 15 or so minutes, 20 minutes towards the end of the game. And it was building a little bit. And not one player managed to grab the game by the scruff of the neck and say, right, okay, I'm taking charge of this now. Wolves deserved out of that second half. They deserved something out of that. Any other Liverpool fan can try and argue with me, but they did at the end of the day. It doesn't matter. They deserved something out of that second half. Cunha was immense.
Yeah, he was.
As a little side note, I would not be surprised if we were in for him in the summertime. It would not surprise me in the slightest. He's definitely our style of player. It was a fantastic goal on his supposed weaker foot as well. That was a great finish. So I think Wolves in the end deserve something, but I do think unless things are addressed very, very quickly, there are going to be some issues. And again, that could come back to the boardroom as well for not strengthening when we're on top again.
And how do you think that could potentially be addressed? Do you think it's a case of boardroom getting it completely squashed and kind of saying, well, now we draw a line in the sand, it's yes or no either way? Or I can't see that happening myself anytime soon in terms of that being public. But do you think it's a case of Slot even just saying to everyone, right, nothing like that in the background, it's all kind of squashed now until the end of the season, we find out definitively what's going either way? That's when we kind of can discuss it. Until then, it's all put aside. But like you said, it's hard to then think of that being put aside because everyone knows it's there.
For me now, I think you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't on this. Like you say, there's no right or wrong. There's no right way and there's no right way. They're both wrong ways because, as you say, it's difficult. You can keep it all brushed under the carpet until the end of the season where you're going to have fans like us constantly questioning this all the way through up until the end of the season, regardless of what the result may be, whether we do win the title or we don't. If we don't, those questions are going to really raise their heads if things haven't been resolved. And they will be put down as reasons, as I can see now, they are reasons for our slight dip in form. Everyone expected all these things to be sorted by the January transfer window. It wasn't. Everyone thought, okay, perhaps we'll get it done by the end of the transfer window. It hasn't. We are now pushing into the third week of February, into the business end of the season, and still nothing. That has to be affecting not just the players, but the squad in general. Because then you got players like Konate as a knock-on effect. Rumours about him going to Madrid or PSG.
Yeah.
And he's going to be sitting there going, all right, Van Dijk and Salah are our two best players. Yet the club are dicking around with their contracts. Where's the ambition? Do I see my future somewhere else? I think it's only fair to put these questions out there at the end of the day. And for me now, I think the club has to be transparent and say, right, Trent, we need a decision off you. Salah, Van Dijk, these are the contracts. Are you going to sign them? No? Fine. We move on. Make it public, and we move on from there. If we lose out on the title because of it, so be it. Well, I think people are getting sick and tired of it. I am. I just want to know.
Yeah, and I can't agree with you. Can't disagree in the fact that everyone just wants it done. I myself, I just can't see it ever getting to a situation where they're going to make it public until they know definitively what's, like either side.
They like doing it in like sort of so secretly, but doing it that way as well, it also transpires onto the squad, and you can see it. You can see it happening over the last few games. I don't know how you rectify it. I do worry that we are going to fluff the title because it's performances like that second half performance. It's performances like we had against Plymouth and also that performance against Everton. We haven't played well at all. And that is a big concern, especially with Villa and City coming up and Newcastle.
Yeah. More games in a really close period as well.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I agree as well about the second half drifting. It did just feel like we were kind of just drifting away from the game, and it almost tasted and felt like there's going to be an equaliser here. It's going to be an equaliser at the end, and I'm just so thankful that it isn't, and the 7-point lead is there still, because it felt like it wouldn't be. Lawrence, I'll just move on to you for a minute. In terms of the second half, what were your you can build on anything Stu's added into there as well, or any kind of thoughts you had on the second half as well, of why it potentially went the way it did?
I think ultimately it goes back to what Reece said at the start of the podcast, where he said about Slot not trusting the subs that he's bringing on, because we've seen a big difference today than what we did on against Everton, for example. Like we touched on the Everton podcast about whether we would bring Endo on in that position. And I think the only reason why he would do that is, the only reason I believe anyway, the only reason why he's brought Endo on today is because he's brought Quans on. And obviously it's not Slot's, number one choice, is it? So I think we've seen a bit of a difference, and you've seen the midfield protecting the defence a lot more today. And as Stu touched on there, we really did. We sat back. We invited our own pressure. You've seen it. Even Salah, Nunes was in the defence mix-up. It was actually quite, alarming to watch how deep and how defensive we were in that second half. Considering we were at home, and when you watch that, if you'd have watched that today and blindly, and you'd have said, "Oh, they're top of the Premier League today," you would not believe it at all. That second half, we're not playing title-winning football at all. And I think, touching on what Stu said there, I agree. We're in the same position as we were last season. We've got a tough run of games coming up, and even after the international break, straight back into a derby. It's going to be a tough few weeks to see out for us. The only thing that we can say is that we won. Essentially, we got the 3 points. For the second half, I agree. Trent was terrible today. He really was. And I think I agree with Stu when he said about the United game. I think it's also affecting Slot's decision making as well. I think he's going, the caliber of player that he is, maybe it feels like he can't drag him off. Maybe the fans will react a bit differently. Maybe they'll see something different. But to be honest with you, in my opinion, I don't care who you are, whether you're the best player in the world or not. If you're not playing well on the day, you get dragged off. And that's the way it should be. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and just building on a couple of things you were saying as well, Lawrence, in terms of not being champions almost the way you'd play. What I'd say on that as well is, even in these games, the last couple of games, we haven't been playing well, but we're not losing games. We're still seeing these games out and making sure we're still there. I mean, we haven't lost a game since September, and 21 games now unbeaten. I know it's not perfect when you don't win games you should, but there is also that side to it as well.
The only thing I'd say about that is I think what's happened is we've gone from last season, we went from this absolute dominant football where we were just blasting teams out the park, and now we're playing a bit more conservative football. But the only thing I'll say is, when Liverpool are one goal up, we never look like we're going to win it. You never watch that game and go, do you know what, this is a safe 3 points here.
Yeah,
we constantly look like we're going to concede, and I know obviously we don't, and obviously a lot of that's down to the likes of Kanate, Van Dijk, even Kwanzaa today. Kwanzaa was actually not bad today, and Alisson made an absolute worldie of a save as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I understand we're not we were still winning games and stuff like that, but I can honestly say, as a Liverpool fan, I never watched the game and go, we're 1-0 up, or even 2-0 up, and we're going, right, we're going to win this now. This is game over. It's not a dominant performance of football, and you can tell that within the first 10 minutes of the second half today.
Yeah. No, I completely get it as well. The second half, it didn't feel, even though even at 2-0, it never really felt completely comfortable, which is why I was like, when the third goal went in, I thought the Salah one, I know it was given as offside. Not really sure on some of the angles with myself.
I don't think so. I think it was just on.
I know the lines weren't drawn either, so it's not 100%.
Yeah.
That we'll leave that one alone. In terms of the penalty as well, I was just like, either just leave it for Diaz to knock it in the goal himself, or just stay on your
Stay
feet
on
and
your
nip it
feet.
in.
I think he could have scored if he'd stayed
Yeah.
on his feet.
Yeah,
So
I don't get it myself.
but,
Yeah. Reece, I mean, just a couple of thoughts from you as well on the second half. What you kind of feelings on how it kind of turned around for Wolves and really our display as well in the second half.
I think the fact we just didn't get that third goal kind of allowed them to still be in the game. Obviously, it's debatable whether Salah was onside or not. Great finish, but obviously when they checked it, they said offside, but it was quite close. What we were just talking about there with the
Sorry, just a quick one. That was a bloody quick offside check, that as well.
Yeah, very, very quick. Yeah.
But we already know this with the PGMO, Stu. We know this. We know this. They got in with us. You know this. But, what was I going to say? Obviously with the Jota chance, that was quite frustrating because that build-up of play was quite great play for Liverpool from Szoboszlai to the flick to Gravenberch to be able to counter. I thought it was just going to be left to Diaz for me because he wouldn't have had to take a touch. He would have just put that in. Obviously, Jota decided to take it. And if you're going to take it, for me, just shoot with your left. You're trying to do too much and score the perfect goal. And obviously, at first, I would have thought it was a penalty because in normal motion, when the game's going quite quickly, you would have thought penalty. But when I looked at it, I was like, why has he dived for? Why is he?
I think
you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I don't really like that stuff in the game. Any players to be doing that for any team.
Yeah.
But especially when you see your own team doing that, we don't need to do that. We've got enough good players. You don't need to go down. Obviously, correct decision to overturn it from the ref. But then, from when that third didn't go in, I still had that feeling. Even at the start of the game, I thought Wolves are going to score. I just felt because of how the game went during the week, that nervy energy, and we've got that PTSD as fans as well, where we've seen it when we've played over the years with City and certain things and last year. And I still think we're going to win the league, but I just think it is frustrating with these contracts in the background. I try not to talk about them, but it's there, and you can see it when Salah plays. You can see it more when Salah plays. You can see it clearly through Trent's body language because he's not really, I wouldn't necessarily say he's playing well. He has moments, but today, similar to what Stu said, too much lackluster passes, too much trying to go for the perfect pass. You don't need to do that. Just keep the ball, keep it simple. When there's an opportunity of cutting between the lines, then do it. But you don't always have to do that kind of pass. We know you can pass your passings out of this world. You don't have to keep doing that. More or less just keep it simple. Robinson kind of rushing in a lot on the left. He was kind of playing today a bit like he was playing for Klopp, where you need to go up and down, where you don't need to do that. And we've seen you kind of be a bit more exposed at the back. You don't need to rush in, and then you're just leaving us kind of open. Konate a bit silly with one or two of his tackles. The midfield, like I said, looked very leggy in the second half. Gravenberch, McAllister, and then even Salah, even though he scored and got an assist, he wasn't really in the game. So it was just kind of frustrating to see because it's like, what's going on? You can have an off game, but to be hanging on, you don't need to be hanging on like that. We've been playing, we've kind of shown why we're the number one team in the league right now. So for them to start doubting themselves it makes you kind of think a bit of deja vu because we've seen this in the past. So hopefully it should come together. But I would like to think kind of how Slot is when a result doesn't go well, and especially that stat you mentioned, Dylan, about them having 10 chances and we didn't have 10 in the second half. I think Slot will be looking over that, obsessing over that to kind of rectify and make sure that you can't be performing like that in the second half.
I hope so with the fixtures that are coming up.
No, and I said it into the group chat during the game as well in the second half. It almost, I was like at the time, I don't know whether this is people are too tired and they need subbing off, or whether it was just complacency was coming into the game. But it felt the whole time like someone just needed a kick in the bollocks and saying, go on, get on with the game, just carry on with it. What is all stopping and not carrying on in the same intensity that you were in the first half? And that was the frustration for me, is that it was there in the first half and then it just drifted. The game just seemed to drift away for no reason.
Even Verge couldn't get control of it, and he's usually the one bellowing it out at the back. But even he couldn't get it. To be fair, actually, that was probably one of the worst games I've seen him play this season as well. He was being bullied a little bit by some of those Wolves players, especially that was it the Zimbabwean striker they brought on in the second half. He put himself about a bit, and pushed Quanta, and I agree with what Lawrence said. Actually, Quanta had a really good second half.
Yeah, and that clearance in particular late on in the game really kind of
Yeah.
saved us in that instance. Yeah, no, and just touching on the subs as well in terms of the people that did come on, because you mentioned as well about with the squads and stuff like that. Does he fully trust the squads or not? Because when you look at people like Harvey Elliott, who's potentially thinking, when am I getting a look in properly? I know Nunez came on, Chiesa again. You touched on earlier on in terms of when is it going to become in terms of consistently playing at the and being there when we need him to come on and stuff like that. If we need him, I know he's had all this stuff earlier in the season, but we'd hope by now he'd be in a position where if we needed him today, you can kind of chuck him on for 20 minutes, half an hour, and it wasn't the case. In terms of the squad and the substitutions that are there, I was quite happy with the Endo situation coming on, and we touched on Wednesday, Lawrence, in terms of that. The Wednesdays seemed to be 15, 20 minutes towards the end, it was screaming for someone to come in and just break the game down and just see it out and not do anything. That's
all it needed.
Really.
But I think we touched on that, and it was obviously it was down to the ref, and you seen it today. I think Endo did give away a couple of stupid fouls, but he also won fouls as well that broke that game down and slowed the game down massively, especially towards the end, the last 5-10 minutes, when you're just going, get the ball up the other end of the pitch. You know, he'd win a foul, he'd just go down and just take the foul and be like, yeah, let's get rid of it. So
like you, Stu, are you kind of happy with the squad and the subs today, or are you thinking a couple of people as well? Where are you? Why are you kind of not being put in as well?
I've stated this many times. He clearly doesn't fancy Nunez as a starter at all. I think Nunez is gone. Summertime, completely gone. He doesn't trust him at all. And to be fair, he didn't really inspire me. I thought, if anything, he's got these chances to come off the bench, and he didn't really do an awful lot. I think Slot was shouting at him a little bit during the game as well to put himself about a little bit more. As for the rest of the subs bench, I mean, okay, you got Bradley who came on. Bradley was excellent, actually, but he came on for Trent. He was excellent. But there are players on there that I think are going to struggle to stay in the squad. It's just the way it is.
Sorry, Stu. What I need to say about the Nunez thing. Yeah, Nunez came on, and yeah, all right, he wasn't the outlet that we needed today. But ultimately, I don't believe that was Nunez's fault. I believe we were playing far too deep, and I don't exactly think that was the team's decision to go, all right, let's play deep and let's invite this pressure. Let's protect this 2-0. They've been told to do that. So I don't think Nunez wasn't the outlet that we want him to be as fans. But you know, I don't think anyone was today. No one was an outlet today. Even Salah. We all sing Salah's praises every single week. I don't think you can base that on Nunez today. But that's all on that.
Yeah, I'm not going to pin it all on Nunez. I mean, at the end of the day, he's the one that came off the subs bench. I think it says a lot that when he's fit as well, he's on the bench a lot. So clearly, Slot doesn't fancy him as a starter. So when you look at the rest of the bench, it's the same with Elliott. He's fit again now as well. So what exactly is happening there? Endo had a great game. He did give away a couple of fouls. Was one in a really dangerous position, which I thought maybe Cunha would have had a pop at, and they made the weird decision to go for somebody else. But I think it was about 18 yards out, just on the edge of the area. I thought,
it was like 80 odd minutes as well.
And they went with Doyle. That was weird for me, but good for us. But Endo, it's like I said before, this is Klopp's squad still. And when you actually take a little step back and think, right, okay, we're top of the league and we're there because we've been playing well this season, besides the last few games, and we've been doing it all with Klopp's squad still. We can look at that as a positive thing and go, okay, perhaps they may have learned from their mistakes of last season, and they're going to go on and use that as a positive experience and will win the title. Or is it going to be a case of history repeating itself? I bloody hope not. I really, really hope not. We're primed to win the title this season, and it's down to us. at the end of the day. But as I said, the main thing is that this is still Klopp's squad using slots system, but it's not slots players.
Yeah.
All these players are not used to this system. It's a difficult one.
Yeah. Reece, interesting point to put to you as well, just from this one here. It says, I don't get the fatigue logic. Our worst performance have always come after a break. I think we do win this run. So obviously with a few games back-to-back now that are coming up, where we've got Wednesdays next weekend against City and then the following Wednesday as well. In terms of that, when you look at the second half today, everyone did seem, whether it was lethargic, whether it was kind of let the game drift, whatever you want to call it, the second half, the legs weren't there in the game. So do you think that could be because of potentially like the Plymouth game where everyone was rested a couple of weeks before that PSV, and potentially that's having a knock-on effect and we are better in these short, sharp amount of periods? Or do you think it is a bit of both, almost fatigue and kind of rhythm as well?
I think a bit of both. Obviously, a lot of the team didn't play against Plymouth, but we got to bear in mind that game during the week was quite an intense game from start to finish. If you look at someone like a Gravenberch, for example, I'm going to use as the example, is whenever he has not had a great game, I'll say the other game I remember was Newcastle. It's more from when he looks tired. He's quite an energetic player when he gets on the ball. He likes to run. He's always up and down. Whereas if you look today, maybe first half, he looked kind of his usual self. Second half, kind of non-existent. And you don't usually say that about Gravenberch. You're always usually speaking about him in terms of dictating the tempo, even at McAllister. Most of the time when we kind of win games and how we kind of kill teams is our midfield is pretty strong. Obviously, Szoboszlai he's probably the only one I'll say who looked fit as a fiddle in terms of the whole game, but you could kind of see the drop-off with McAllister. Gravenberch, even like what you said with Van Dijk, he don't usually look like he's going to make a mistake. But I'm sure at one time I saw him, I think he kind of got barged and went to the ground. But it looked, if anything, that he wasn't 2 or 3 steps ahead how he usually was. So a lot of the players, that's why I say that for me, tired, because there's certain players you can tell when they're not, because they don't make certain mistakes. Whereas second half, Wolves just look sharp, a lot sharper. So yeah, that's my opinion for that.
Yeah, no, and I can't disagree that it felt like in terms of the game, no one seemed to be the start of the second half. Like I say, we had the goal that was given offside, we had the penalty, and we did seem to come out almost with a bit of impotence again to go, let's see this game off. And then from, I don't know, 50, 55 minutes onwards, everything just seemed to stop. We stopped running. We stopped. The link up in between the defensive midfield wasn't there at all in the second half compared to the way it was in the first half. The intensity levels just seemed to drop off from everyone. And that's the frustration out from me from today, because we could have been away from that game 3 or 4-0, and then there should be no danger at the end with the hanging on to basically not draw 2-2 in terms of the game and seeing it out. But before we move away from the game, is anyone kind of want to add anything else to it before we move away from the game and just have a chat about some of the other things that have been mentioned in the last couple of days as well?
I'm going to pick something up in a second, actually. Sorry.
Yeah, no sound. Anyone else want to add anything to it?
No, I think it all runs in to the rest of it now. So.
Yeah, or sound. On the game itself, then all I'll say is there is the frustration there from the second half, but put it to bed now. 7 points clear. That's all we can take from today. The weekend's over with us still 7 points clear of Arsenal, potentially 10 points clear if we are to win at Villa in the week. And then we have City next weekend, but Arsenal play in between. So say, for example, next week when they weren't to get a good result, it could be anything up to 11, 13 points by the end of next weekend. Who could say? So there is still positives there from today's performance. I know it's frustrating when the second half goes the way it goes, but the 3 points at the end of the day is the sign of hopefully champions-elect, fingers crossed, champions-elect come the end of the season, and see from there. Just touching on the end of the game as well, Slot mentioned in his presser at the end that he was hailing the squad's mentality, and he was saying to see out a Nervy game like this is exactly what we kind of need. We do have to win these ugly games as well as the games where we are playing well, so that's a good thing to take out from this as well. And he did also mention that potentially for Wednesday, not 100% sure, it's a bit debatable at the moment whether Cody Gakpo will be in the squad or will be able to maintain fitness levels by Wednesday to be back into the squad for then, or whether it could be potentially next Saturday. In terms of his words after the game, as well. He went up to the cop for the first time and he actually gave it a bit to the cop instead of his usual one where he just kind of clapped and moved on. It was the first time he's kind of interacted with the cop a bit. You could almost see
he's getting the bug. He's getting it. Exactly. He's getting it.
Yeah, you could it almost felt like the game where he went, this is the kind of games where we do see things through in this stadium and it doesn't kind of go wrong when you think it might. So it felt a bit like that at the end with him, G and everyone up at the end as well. So hopefully that can be introduced a little bit more. What are your thoughts, Stu, on kind of how he summed it up with the mentality of the squad and the squad as a whole in terms of seeing that through from there?
Again, I think obviously it's a bit of press protection from the manager there. I'm sure in the changing room he wouldn't need to remind the players how poor that second half performance was.
Yeah.
But he's also right. You do have these days where you just don't perform for whatever reasons, the reasons that we've all mentioned. And I remember probably not so long ago we had these games before Klopp came along, and our mentality was nowhere near good enough, and we'd fluff them. We'd fluff games like this. Now we grind them out, but again, the same should have happened against Everton if it wasn't for some dodgy refereeing going on. But these sort of results, but at the end of the day, we've only lost one league game all season.
Exactly.
One.
Yeah.
And that was a 1-0 against Forest, which nobody expected. Barring that little blip, we can still look at it in a completely positive light, as you say. We're top of the league, 7 points. I'm looking at the fixture run-in. I think our fixture run-in is actually a little bit harder than Arsenal's. And I didn't actually realise that May is going to be a bloody interesting month.
I
didn't actually look that far ahead until now, and that is looking like I could see it now. It's kind of written in the stars that playing Arsenal's third to last game of the season at Anfield. I kind of got a funny feeling now that there's going to be something riding on that.
I'm hoping it'll be wrapped up by then, Stu. Try and get it wrapped up.
Yeah, that's same here.
Or they're going to present the Premier League trophy to us at that game.
And something like that.
Don't speak it.
That would be brilliant. Just to see Arteta's Lego head go boo.
I know a lot of Arsenal fans are riding on that game. I'm more looking at every game's a challenge, but I'm more looking at the next 2 games. I think if we can win that game during the week, that's 10 points. I always, and then the Man City game as well, even though we should beat them, it's not going to be as straightforward as everyone thinks. I think that's always.
I'll be saving Gakpo for the City game, to be fair. Well.
We got to bear in mind. I think you see how we had the game in hand with Everton. I've always preferred. I like to play, rather have the game played instead of have a game in hand. I rather the points in the bag, so we can get the points against Aston Villa, and that's 10 points. Arsenal can have a game in hand, but they've got to play that game in hand for me
and win it if we win.
And they've got to win it. Yeah,
that's it. They've got to get to the game by May. They've still got to get to there before we start worrying about that. So they've got to keep on our curtails until that point. So hopefully, like you say, we've pulled away from them by then. And
they weren't that great this weekend either. I know they got injuries. I think it was 0-0 to the 82nd minute. And obviously Moreno played false 9 and got them out of jail. Let's see if that's going to work every week. I don't think so. So I think if they play a better team than Leicester, they don't win. So even though we weren't that great, they weren't great either. So if it was another team, I'd be more concerned. If it was City or something, then I could understand some of these little slits. But I just don't see, when we drop points, they don't seem to capitalize. They seem to drop more than us. So like I said, we just sort of keep winning our games.
Like I touched on about Slot with his words about the team from today and the mentality, I just wanted to touch on Slot's record as well so far in this season, just to kind of put it out there about how well the season potentially has been going, even despite games like this where we are just seeing it over the line and seeing a 2-1 win. That's now, I think, was it 40 games in charge and 30 wins out of his 40 games in charge. And I think of the managers in the Premier League, there's only been Mourinho, who's got more points from his first 25 games in charge. Mourinho got 64 points compared to Slot's 60. And I think Slot was joint with Antonio Conte on 60 for that. So there's only one person who's potentially in his first 25 games done better to this point. So in terms of that, where would you kind of rate in terms of where we are with Slot, and is there anything in terms of improvement? We've kind of touched on a couple of things, whether it's squad rotation or whether it's the trust in some of the other potential squad or fringe players. Where do you kind of lie on where we're at and potential changes? I'll start with you on it, Stu. What do you think on that?
I'll look at it one or two ways, and again, it all depends on the contract situation. But I am fully expecting a very, very busy summer. To be honest, like I said, I'll stick with this. It is Klopp's squad, bar Chiesa, and it's Klopp's squad that he's used. A lot of these players he's used quite a lot, and Slot plays in a slightly different, tweaked way of what that system is, but he does like specific players for those positions. Again, back to the Zubimendi deal that fell through. Clearly a defensive midfielder that he likes that style of player, but it's not somebody that we would necessarily have brought in before. Somebody with Klopp, we wanted somebody who was a bit more of a breaker-upper like Fabinho. So again, it's all those things. I do see a lot of players leaving this summer. I think the likes of Kelleher out, Tsimikas, Morton, Diaz, Nunes, even Jota, Gomez. That's 7 players I can name just off the top of my head now. I think that is a lot of players that could end up going out for one reason or another. I think Jota and Gomez would be because of the injury records and the fact that they've just not been available, and Slot just does not. He likes short injury periods. He's not one of these managers that's had to deal with a lot of long-term injuries. And again, the players that need the game time, we're not getting the game time out of them. So I wouldn't be surprised if those two moved along as well. So yeah, I expect a lot of new faces come summertime. It's going to be interesting, to say the least. See how much they dip into the pocket.
Lawrence, what about you? What do you think of kind of the record so far? And again, is there anything you think in terms of tweaks or improvements that could have been made along the way or that can still be made? I mean, it's a pretty good record, 75% win rate. And
I mean, it is, yeah, of course. And I agree with Stu. It is Klopp's team, bar Chiesa, but like what we're all forgetting as well is it was Slot's decision not to sign anyone this summer, this transfer window. He was the one who said, I don't want to sign anyone because he wants to see what he's got. I agree. I do think Jota and Gomez could go, and I agree with it should be, these probably should go because at the end of the day, they're just a wage deficit. You know, whether that's the way we see it. Every season's the same thing. Although they're great players, but they're just not playing. So I would rather get rid and potentially get one person, maybe 2 people, but one particular good person for the money that we could get for them. Contracts, obviously, that I think that's probably the biggest thing that I think every Liverpool fan would change for this season, because I feel like we definitely would have seen a different Trent, a different Van Dijk, a different Salah. You know, don't know whether the contracts are playing a thing on Trent's mind, of course, but I would say since the media have gripped it and they've started throwing stories out left, right and centre about it, they're getting asked every single game at press conferences and whatever, have you done the contract? Have you done the contract? You know, maybe that is playing an effect to him, and that's obviously something that I would change because I do think that is affecting results. I think it's affecting players' performances as well. In terms of Slot, I think we're seeing just a different style of football than what we've been used to for the last 7-8 years under Klopp. I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a completely different style of football, different play of different styles of play, and it's just not what we're used to. You know,
I know we had this chat a couple of weeks ago, didn't we, about the differences of what you're used to seeing over the last few years to what you're seeing now in terms of the controlled football. That's what it's just that it's a different style of play, it's a different way of playing. Yeah. And I think some players don't fit that, you know, they don't fit them roles. So potentially big changes in the summer. But I think for right now, Slot just needs to focus on one performance at a time. We've got two really difficult games coming up, both away from home as well. And it's about players' fitness and about players, you know,
players' performances in them 2 games. I think if we win them 2, we're probably looking a lot better than what we could be. Because I agree as well with what Reece said before. I can't see Arsenal going on a mad run and winning every single game now. They've got points to drop as well. So it's just up to us. It's ours to lose now, isn't it? So
yeah, that's it.
But-
Reece, what about you? What are your thoughts on the whole season in terms of slot? And again, anything you think in terms of tweaks or slight improvements that could have been made along the way or still can be?
I've been very impressed with Slot, because it's not, for me, it's easy for a manager to come in and straight away start changing it and be like, I don't want this one, I don't want that one, I want this one, I want that one. Whereas you could tell he's quite an experienced manager, and he didn't allow the fact that the job of Liverpool to kind of get to him to think, oh, the pressure and whatnot. He's kind of looked at the squad and thought, there are some good players here. This is a good team. He's obviously probably been watching Liverpool from the seasons when we're with Klopp as well, to see that this is quite a good squad. There's probably some tweaks that's needed, but let me see who can up the levels to when I'm going to tweak it, my style of play. And you can kind of see who can and who can't, because you can see who he trusts and who he doesn't trust. I think it's more, like I said, if we can get this over the line, I think it's more promising in terms of when he's able to get some of his own players in. Obviously, we know we've got the contracts. We've got to wait and see what goes on there. I still believe 2 out of the 3 will stay, even though it should have really been rectified already. But I've been very impressed. I kind of prefer this style of play because it's more controlled. You're more today's game kind of felt a bit like Klopp's kind of way of playing a little bit, because there was times we were playing and it's like really, really quick, and then it's a bit out of control. And you can kind of see that a little bit as well with how we were in the second half. But yeah, I've been quite impressed with Slot. I like how he tweaks things, especially as well when the first half of things don't always go according to plan. He usually rectifies and figures out what's going on. So yeah. I can't really say nothing bad about Slot. To be fair, it's been really good.
Yeah, and like you've all touched on there, in terms of the squad, yes, he did inherit a good squad from Jurgen Klopp, but at the end of the day, it also takes a strong manager to come in and say, do you know what? This is a good squad, and I have a good squad of players, so I don't need to sign 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 players in terms of it to make my team. If I can develop this team into the style of football I want to bring onto this team, then why wouldn't I use the players that are already here when they're this good, potentially? So that's kind of what I thought when he came in. I know there was debates with Zubimendi.
In a way, that kind of makes me admire him more for him taking that more patient and pragmatic approach with the squad and looking at it going, okay, right, I'll give it a season. Let's see who I need and who I don't. And I still think that is the plan overall. It is a case of who do I want to keep and who do I want to let go, so to speak. But at the end of the day, nobody expected Man City's fallen off. Arsenal doing whatever Arsenal whinge about, and Man United falling apart, and Spurs just being even more Spursy this season than anything else. This season, it just has been a bunch of weird anomalies.
Yeah,
but we're the ones that are standing out.
Yeah.
From it. And that is down to Slot. That is down to Slot.
Yeah.
With United, I did expect that still. I still think United is going to be trash because they've got a lot of problems.
Yeah, they're going to be a few years before they start.
And long may it continue with United because it's great. It's great.
Yeah.
In terms of what I had to grow up with United winning and go and score and stuff, this is great. So long may it continue.
Exactly.
Tottenham. For me, they always play a bit of nice football here and there, but do they really win anything? Arsenal's got a good team, but like I said, is he going to get them over the line? I think he should have. 2 seasons ago, when they were top for most of the season, that's when they should have really won the league. I think that this is the problem they've got there, where they kind of missed that. Obviously, I know they're saying because City dropped off, it should have been Arsenal's, but people forget that we were in and amongst it last year. Obviously, we dropped off, but we were in and amongst it last year. For me, it wasn't going to be a given that's going to be Arsenal's. I know we didn't see what was going to happen with City this season, but I felt even if it wasn't this season, at some point they were going to have one season like this because their squad is getting a lot older as well. But what was the other thing I was going to say? With Slot as well, we've got to bear in mind he had to come in and earn and command the respect of the players, because you got players there who are seasonal winners who have won kind of everything. They could think, who's this guy, or can I be bothered to have to try and prove myself? Why should I have to prove myself again? So the fact he was able to come in and make that adjustment so quickly is just even more credit to the kind of person and manager where Slot is.
And when you look at the start of the season as well, when we didn't make a couple of signings and people were saying if we're going to be in the top 4, it's going to be a good season. If we are just outside the peripheries of that, then it's still a relatively good season. If we go to a cup final and just get top 4 potentially for that, so to kind of move it on to the levels he has during the season is a credit to him and the credit to where he's kind of taken the squad. And when you look at the 40 games as well, I know I said he's won 30 of them, but equally the 4 that he's lost, one nobody would have expected Nottingham Forest. Plymouth in the FA Cup, he plays a weakened team and kind of, I wouldn't say accepts the fact that we're going to go out of it, but at the end of the day, it is with kind of where we're at in terms of the league, the Champions League and the Carabao Cup. It's one of them you can almost see why if you go out, but nobody's happy to go out in that instance, but you can kind of see it. Tottenham away in the first leg of the Carabao Cup. Again, it's a semi-final. The first leg was exactly how it was meant to be played out. Neither team was willing to win or lose by a big score, so a 1-0 loss isn't the end of the world. And then the other one, PSV, we're already through in the Champions League and he plays a second string or mix of a second string and some youngsters for that as well. So even the games that he has lost weren't expected losses really in terms of the Nottingham Forest, and then the 3 where you look at and go, they're not the worst defeats in the world anyway. So it's overall from the 40 games, there's nothing really negative to take from it other than like in these types of games where you go, I want to see a little bit more in the second half. I want to see the intensity. And I want to see is the whole way through the game with that Jurgen Klopp almost mentality of going, let's go and kill the game. Let's get a third, a fourth, a fifth, and try and really see the game out instead of control all the time. But I can see why it's the good thing as well when we are top of the league, 7 points clear as well. So it's a hard argument either way.
And the thing as well with the Forest loss, Forest have been second for most of the season. So
yeah, they've been.
I don't think anyone's seen anything like that. So it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. In terms of, like you said, maybe a busy summer, just kind of move on to a couple of links that have been coming through in the last couple of days as well. And I know we're kind of continuously linked with Kirkesh, it seems, around the left back situation with obviously Robertson and Shimikas that people keep mentioning. I know we've had a couple of discussions about Kirkesh, and I think Aït-Nouri's names come up a couple of times as well. But one name over the last couple of days come up for a couple of rumours and news stories is Warren Zaire-Emery from PSG as well. And I know 18-year-old kid at the end of the day, I know he's done well in the last couple of years, but in terms of the profile for us, he's a defensive midfielder or a centre midfielder. He kind of plays across the 2 roles. For me, the fee is quite big for an 18-year-old, but in terms of what you kind of might see from it, the fee being somewhere around 65 million euros or 55 million-ish pounds, somewhere in around there. Do you think in terms of the links to someone like Zaire-Emery is a good link for us in terms of what we could be looking for, where last year, like you mentioned, the Zubamendi didn't happen and we kind of moved on from that now that he kind of turned us down, which I think if someone turns you down, you go, fine, I'll go somewhere else. It's not an issue for me. I wouldn't just keep chasing the same person for the sake of the same person. But what do you think of the links to Zaire-Emery? I'll start with you, Stu. What do you reckon?
It's a nice link. I think it's probably the best way to describe it. It's a nice link. Hey, if Agent Kanate is on the ball and he's putting a little word in his ear about coming over from PSG to us, I'm all for it. That's not a problem. It's not tapping up, I don't think. He's a talented lad. He's one of those midfielders. He's got the world at his feet. He's an extremely good player already. I just can't see it. I just think it's one of those lazy little press links. Unfortunately, he's a Parisian as well.
Yeah, exactly.
18 years old. Why? It's like saying an 18-year-old Trent would want to move on from Liverpool. Why?
Yeah,
it's
18-year-old Parisian, came through the academy, started in the team at 6. He played. What did I think I wrote down earlier on? He played 36 games in his first season at 16.
Yeah,
they obviously back him. They obviously think he's a good enough player. So the links to me is a bit, like you say, it's one of them that seems to have come a little bit out of the blue. But
lazy journalism.
See what happens with it. Yeah. What do you reckon of a player like him, though, Lawrence? I know, like I say, at 16 he was playing alongside Messi, Neymar, and all of them in that team for PSG. So there's obviously talent there.
I think it's clear there's talent there, but I just don't think he's a £55 million 18-year-old.
Yeah.
I think the thing is as well, I think there's like a lot of, yes, he played alongside Messi, Neymar, whatever, but it's only League One. Like, without sounding disrespectful to the French league, but it's League One. Like, to do it in the Premier League is a completely different ball game.
Especially at 18.
Yeah, especially at 18. They're the stages where he's moldable. Is he going to be good enough in a couple of years' time, 4 or 5 years' time, when he's 22, 23? Is he going to be bossing the park the way that we're watching subs like McAllister and Gravenberch now? No. So I think for me, the left back position, I think, is probably the number one, I would say, at the minute. I think Robertson's getting on a little bit. You can see it. His legs are going for the long games. And Tsimikas is the same as well. I think Tsimikas is brilliant. We've got 2 amazing left backs, but I think it is time to start looking towards the future now. I would love to see Kirkesh, the Bournemouth left back, in. I know Aït-Nouri was mentioned as well, but I'm not too sure on that one. I'm not too sure whether that one's like as big as a conversation as the Kirkesh one. But I'd love to see Kirkesh in. I think he's been brilliant for Bournemouth this year. And again, he's young. I think as he's doing it in the Premier League, that's the difference. He's doing it in the Premier League. He's young enough, but also wise enough to know what he's coming up against in the Premier League. And I think Slot could potentially get, a good amount out of him as well. Not too sure on the Warren Zaire-Emery thing. It could be everybody. What's his name? Mbappe story again. We were linked with Mbappe for years, and then he's gone. We were linked with Bellingham for years, and then he's gone. So for me, it's until we start seeing
concrete evidence,
concrete evidence that he wants to come to Liverpool, and I don't really listen to the crap rumours anymore.
Yeah. What about you, Reese? What are your thoughts on if it was potentially a story that was to come out with kind of any more noise around it with Zaire-Emery? Is it an interesting one you kind of think of for us, or do you kind of see it like they said, where maybe the Parisian, he's already been in their team? Is it one that you kind of go, maybe someone's just making a story of it?
I think he's a talented player, but I just think it's unrealistic. And I think in terms of what we're going to go for, I'd like to think we do get another midfielder or another DM kind of player that it's going to be a bit more of an experienced player, a bit more further down the line. And I think if he's as talented as from what we can see, PSG would be kind of silly to let him go. For me, I just think, and I don't see our owners paying that amount of money for an 18-year-old. So, like I said, if you see something more, if I see a bit more news in the summer or something, then. But right now, I'm not really paying no mind to that. We've got kind of other errors, like I said, we need to address. So there's quite a few errors, and I do expect, like you said, I do think there's going to be more outgoings than people realize, and then I think there's going to be a few coming in as well. So, and it needs to be, for me, more seasoned players. We've got quite talented youngsters and people coming through our academy. I don't think we need to get.
Sorry.
Oh,
sorry,
I don't need to get. I don't think we need to get an 18-year-old from somewhere else. I think, that's just my view.
I was going to say, I think our transfer, ultimately, the big signings are going to result in what happens with the contracts. That's what the summer's going to result in. Obviously, if the 3 of them do go, I would like to see them all stay, but if the 3 of them do go, they're the areas that we need to buy in first and foremost. So it's going to ultimately come down to that. But I think, as Reece said, until things start coming out a bit more around the summertime, that's when you start listening. But straight after a transfer window, it's not the time to be listening now. We've got a league to win.
Exactly that. And also with the Zaire-Emery stuff as well, what I think of it when you see the story come out straight after the transfer window, it's an easy story to make when people like Elliott aren't in the team as much, when Jones is out suspended and stuff like that. Because if you think about next season, potentially with some of those players, what would bringing in someone like Zaire-Emery, who's a younger player, mean to players like Elliott, to Jones, to Bajcetic, who's going to come back from loan, to all those types of players who are then going to be going, well, I thought I was going to have a look in the team, and now you've just spent 55 million on another 18-year-old. Does that mean I'm now completely out of the squad? Don't get me wrong, I think he's a very, very talented boy in terms of what he could potentially bring to a midfield, but 55 million for 18 and what it could do to potentially some of the other squads, I can't see it for myself at this moment in time, if I'm brutally honest with where we're at. In terms of other kind of transfers, I know we touched on a couple there. Is there anyone that kind of springs to mind that would kind of be a dream for the summer, and you go, who that's kind of the one person if we could sign someone in the summer? Isak.
I think Isak, yeah. He's probably the biggest noise as well at the minute.
Yeah.
Him and Kirkach are both the two biggest noise in the transfer news.
There's only one I would take over Isak as a striker. It's probably not who you're thinking, but it's going to be my pick. If we can't get Isak, would be Openda from Leipzig.
Oh, from Leipzig. Yeah, it's a decent shout.
He's he's got the most similar numbers to Isak at the moment. So he's the one I would go for on that.
Do you reckon we spend 100 million on Isak though?
If we sell Nunes for 70, yeah.
Yeah, potentially, yeah.
True. Then he's only 30 million, isn't he? But
that's prime FSG movement, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's at the end of the day, it keeps our costs down.
But I still think there's other players that are going to go for money. Kelleher is not going to go for cheap. I think that's 40 million, if not 50. He's a top goalie. You got to think about Diaz as well. Why can't Diaz go for 50 or 60 million? He's got 2 years left. Gomez, maybe 20, 30, and then
Tsimikas 20 to 25. Easy.
And then this is what I'm trying to say. I still think that we're going to make money from a few of these players going on top of them giving him money. They're not going to necessarily give him the amount he's supposed to get, but I think they'll give him a little bit, and then the majority of it will be from
the key thing for me, especially on the Isak thing, is where Newcastle finish this season.
Yeah, Champions League or not.
If they don't get Champions League, that's it. He has to go, and I think Gordon goes as well. That'd be an interesting one. Double swoop, maybe.
Could be. Yeah, it could well be. Yeah. In terms of kind of ones I was thinking as well, obviously we've mentioned the left back situation where it's been mentioned and quite well documented during the season where people think we could do with another one. Another one could potentially be a centre back as well. When you look at kind of the options, if Ibu's head is turned by PSG and there is that conversation to be had, and Joe Gomez potentially, if the kind of look at the situation, even though he left in the summer, just gone as well. So something to look at there. I think the lad at Bournemouth, is it Huijsen? Yeah. I'm not sure how you say his name. Very, very, very good player in the Premier League this season. And he's only 19, I think, as well. So it's another good option to potentially have a look at. And then if there is to be a striker that needs to come in, if Nunes is to leave, then I can't see any further than if there was the big money one to come in, it might well be Isak. But who could say where if we were to look elsewhere, if there wasn't to be a big money one to come in. Good. Anyone else you want to mention, or anything else anyone wants to talk through? I know we've gone for an hour and 12 already, but anything else anyone wants to go through?
No, I'm good. I've had my rant. So.
That's it.
Yeah.
All good. Good. Well, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. Before we do sign off, just again, same as I said at the start, just make sure to like and subscribe. Turn on your notifications for future streams and videos, just so you don't miss out on future content as well. And at the end of this lovely Sunday evening, Liverpool are top of the league, 7 points clear of Arsenal. Hopefully, come Wednesday night, we can have a Poachmaster stream talking about being 10 points clear of Arsenal. And then who knows, come the weekend, they've got to do their business. And if not, we can pick up when we hopefully go and beat City as well and put even more pressure on Arsenal from there. So just remember, lads, I know it's frustrating, but 7 points clear, up the Reds. Good night, everyone. Thanks for joining.